Hello guys, Mr. E here. Today I want to talk about the Keystones on this class, on the Hive Scum, and how they really aren't very good at all. In fact, I'm going to save the best for last here and talk about some that are just beyond useless because they literally are non-functional. But we are going to start by talking about the one good keystone out of these lot, and that is chemical dependency. I don't know why my dog is losing his mind down there. Subscribe if you want to see pictures of Bernie, by the way. Chemical dependency here gives you 10% ability cooldown reduction up to 3 stacks. You can jump it to 4. If you grab this node here, you can take this node down here and get 5% crit per stack that you gain, and you can take this node here and get 5% toughness damage reduction. So all told, for 4 points here, you can get yourself 40% cooldown, 20% crit, and 20% toughness damage reduction, plus using the stim gives you 50% of your toughness. Or you can spend only 3 nodes and get 30%, 15, and 15, right? So I think it's definitely worth that one if you can swing that 60-second cooldown. I think not only is this a well-designed node that sort of focuses you in on using lower cooldown stims in order to get that maxed out chem version, but it really synergizes with a lot of stuff this class wants to do. Having a shorter cooldown is very essential for things like Stim Supply and Enhanced Desperado, and even our shortest cooldown Rampage really wants to have it up more often than not. Cutting 40% off of that cooldown is a welcome change. And this also, of course, gives you 20% crit, which is a thing that you'll see me using on a ton of builds. 20% crit is a really good amount, guys. So that is a really good keystone. It's super solid. And so this is why you'll see on a lot of my builds, look how many of my builds that I use this keystone on. Almost all of them. The rare exception is Vulture's Mark, which we'll get to last year, but you'll see that on none of my builds do I choose this middle keystone. Even on melee builds, such as this one with the tack axe, or this one, the Gordon Fentman with the crowbar, right? I am not using this keystone. Why is that? Well, let's go ahead and explore it. So, one of the big issues that this class has with its keystones is that 2 of these keystones are completely devoted to only one type of gameplay, and Adrenaline Frenzy is the pinnacle of that problem. It is a melee-only keystone. It only builds up stacks and gives any effect when you are hitting things with your melee, and it only gives you benefits to your melee. So, in order to get this buff active, you need to get, let's go ahead and actually spec into it, you need to get hits on enemies. Now this can proc multiple times on, say, hordes like this. Let's get them over here. So you'll see that I'll get some stacks here. See, I can get multiple stacks there. So it's pretty easy to stack up with the hits there. And once you get up to 30 stacks, you will trigger this buff that lasts for 10 seconds. Now this buff, what it gives you is right here, 10% attack speed and 25% melee damage lasting 10 seconds. And during that time, you need to build the stacks back again before you lose the buff, right? Because the buff is just flat. It lasts for those 10 seconds, starting when you hit 30 stacks and ending 10 seconds later, no matter what, unless you have this talent down here, which extends it to 20 seconds. So here's my first problem with this node. First of all, for many weapons and for, like single target focus weapons, this is too many hits required to get this stacked up. If you are not staying constantly on the offensive and going for a very aggressive playstyle, getting up there and hitting multiple enemies, cleaving through multiple enemies, especially using weapons like the bone saw. The bone saw is really poor at getting this stacked up effectively, and that means that this weapon, or even worse, the combat axe going the Rashad, it's really hard to get it stacked because it's a slow weapon. Its most effective attack is the overhead chop, so you get one hit with that. So you really can't get this stacked up very much. And when you do, what does it give you? 10% attack speed and 25% melee damage. Well, guess what? We are playing melee because we were playing Adrenaline Frenzy, right? This means we are going either Rampage or Stim Supply. If you're going Stim Supply, there's really no reason why you would probably want Adrenaline Frenzy. I can't really think of a reason why you would take this over Chemical Dependency, considering the cooldown reduction is so valuable for Stim Supply. But with Rampage having as short a cooldown as it does, I could see you wanting Adrenaline Frenzy because, we don't need any more cooldown cutoff, and this could provide you 10% attack speed and 25% melee damage. The problem with that is Rampage already gives you 20% melee attack speed and 50% melee power, and this node over here gives you an additional 25% melee power. So how does that actually change the calculation? Well, instead of gaining 10% attack speed, let's say we were doing 100 damage per second, right? If we were doing 100 damage per second and we attack 10% faster, we'll be doing 110% damage per second. And then if we add 25% damage to that, we'll be doing 137.5 damage per second. Okay, which is a 37.5% increase in DPS, 40%. That's pretty nice, right? But let's assume that we are using Rampage, which is sort of like, you know, how you would be playing your melee build. Rampage gives you 50% melee power and then another 25%. So we would already be doing 175 damage per second, and it gives you that 20% multiplier for a total of 210% of your normal damage, right? Now, if you add in Adrenaline Frenzy on top of that, if you already had 175 and you boost that to 200% with this attack, with that extra melee damage there, and you add in only 10% more attack speed on top of the 30 that's already there, that's going to bring you to 1.3, so that's 260. So the difference in what we've had there is really only taken us from 210 to 260, and if you can do that math there, that's only a 23% increase in damage. So we've lost almost half the effect, or the effective gain, out of this buff just by already having redundant buffs within Rampage, right? When you consider the effects of certain talents, it's better to have additive bonuses, or sorry, multiplicative bonuses outside, such as things like Sweet Spot, right? Weak spot damage is going to be additional multipliers when you're getting weak spot hits on top of the base, the hugely boosted base damage we're already doing up here. And hyperviolence is going to be even more damage on top of that. So these sort of things can stack up, but this is stacking something we already have. We already have a lot of attack speed. Plus, not even mentioning, if you have Swift Endurance here, for instance, this is Gordon Fentman, right? This build has 34% attack speed from this node, and then we have 20% here, so we're sitting at 54% attack speed already. 10% attack speed, therefore, is less than a 20% increase over what we had before, and that is very low. That is almost unnoticeable, that amount of extra attack speed, and the 25% melee damage is going to be next to unnoticeable, because guess what? We get a bunch of base melee damage just out of taking hyperviolence here. Hyperviolence will, on average, give you 10 times more melee damage than this will. So Adrenaline Frenzy is just useless. Like, it gives you almost no stats, and it has very low uptime. The only way you can improve its uptime is by taking Stoked Rage, which gives it a reasonable uptime by increasing the Adrenaline Frenzy to 20 seconds. But even then, you're going to have vast swaths of combats where this is not up, because it takes too long to proc in combat, and by the time that you do, especially if you're playing on lower difficulties, this will effectively have just gotten stacked up by the time the combat is over, right? You'll get 30 stacks, and you'll fight for 5 seconds, and then the combat, the horde waves are over. It's really only good in consistent long-term fighting, which doesn't occur on most of the game. Now, let's go on to the other really annoying thing about it that I think is just the worst design. All of these nodes out here, which on other classes could be devoted to like adding interesting beneficial effects to the class. Think about Keystones like on the Veteran with Weapon Specialist. One of those nodes replenishes the ammo in your magazine as you get melee kills. It allows you to open up different sorts of builds. There's nodes on the Arbites for Executioner Stance, Execution Order, that give you additional cooldown, that give you additional movement speed, that can make you better at killing bosses. Those are interesting, beneficial effects that you can change which ones you pick based on your build and really tailor like what you're going to get out of choosing this keystone. Unfortunately, out of this entire keystone, there is literally nothing interesting or build defining here at all. In fact, all of these, Adrenaline Assassin and Adrenaline Smiter, are literally just different ways to get the stacks, and they are they erase the base way. This is spending a point just to cover up for a weakness of this talent. So you spend a point because you've got a weapon that isn't very good at getting the stacks the normal way. And then the same thing applies to Adrenaline Assassin. These are just worthless. Like, you just use a different build if you're contemplating that. And then down here we have Uncontrolled Aggression, and as I said before, Stoked Rage. These just make certain that the buff is actually like getting to come up and staying up for some amount of time at all, because they realize that the buff falls off too fast and it's too hard to get. So all 4 of these nodes here are just covering your ass for the fact that this keystone sucks, is too hard to get, and is too weak. And that's bonkers. And then you have one final node down here that gives you 5% toughness per second while this is active. So yeah, congratulations. You get the base effect that Veteran has all the time from just a normal talent while just standing around and not getting meleeed, only for the 10 or 20 seconds when this is active. And yeah, that sucks. None of these are flavorful. They're all super bland, super boring. This keystone is really bad, and you shouldn't be using it on any melee builds. I guarantee you 100% you will get higher average damage, and you will play a safer, more effective game if you spend the similar number of points over here in Chemical Dependency. Even if you only take 1 point, which would be insane, but even if you only take 1 point into it, you'll get 30% cooldown, which is better than the stats that are provided here, because having more cooldown is better. Okay, so that's the issues with Adrenaline Frenzy. It sucks. Enough said. Okay, let's go on and talk about Vulture's Mark now. Vulture's Mark has its own set of problems, guys, and I'm here to showcase a little bit of that here today. Vulture's Mark has some interesting things going on. Let's go ahead and check it out. So first of all, Vulture's Mark gives you these stacks of range damage, range critical strike chance, and movement speed. And when you're at max stacks, special elite kills restore 15% toughness to you and allies and coherency. You know, that isn't half bad, especially considering you can get the base effect of this for 1 point. It's directly underneath some pretty valuable things like hypercritical, right? So it's not that far out of your way, and it's gonna give you effectively a lot of damage, and it gives you some toughness back. Just the base node of Vulture's Mark is okay. The problem is that it really only works for builds that lean into their range focus, which is another thing, you know, I'll hammer home this again. I really, really dislike this idea of designing a keystone to only function for one type of weapon, or like, you know, one range or melee. Right, they would be designing a whole keystone just to function with just shotguns, effectively. So yeah, that is the rub of Vulture's Mark. But hey, on its face, a lot better than Adrenaline Frenzy. Now we do have a little bit of a cop-out node here with Patient Hunter. My personal opinion on this is that Vulture's Mark has too short a duration as it currently sits. I think this needs to get buffed to at least 10 seconds. They need to remember that most players are not playing on Damnation difficulty, where there are actually a sufficient amount of elites and specials to kill, and you're also competing with other players to kill these, and you have to kill them with ranged weapons. So yeah, if you happen to have like a trapper or a dog run into you and you use your melee weapon to dispatch them, that doesn't count. If someone else happens to steal the kill from you, that doesn't count. And 8 seconds is a very, very short amount of time for players on difficulties where there's just not that many enemies to keep these stacks up. So Patient Hunter here is a bit of a cop-out. It's a way of, like, you know, kind of smoothing this over so you have better uptime. And honestly, in most cases, because the 50% extension in this duration, it's kind of worth it even on higher difficulties as well. So, because you lose that max stacks, that toughness regeneration to you and allies and coherency, which is very, very nice. You lose that when you don't have max stacks, so it's definitely important to keep it up. But the bigger problem is with what's going on down here. Vulture's Push. As many people have reported, Vulture's Push doesn't appear to do anything, and I'm here to confirm today that in fact it doesn't do anything, guys. So as we read it, right, Vulture's Push is now equipped. Push, killing elite or special enemies with range attacks knocks all enemies around you backwards. Okay, so this is an elite enemy, right? Wow, what a push. That's a push. That's apparently the push that we're expecting out of this talent. Notably, this does not knock like any enemies that weigh more than a single pound. Look, this guy, unfazed, right? This in the beta or in the playtesting was very powerful. It would take a bulwark like this, and it would lay him on his ass. Now he is completely unfazed. He takes no stagger whatsoever. So this node is as good as dead. I don't know what happened. I think that maybe they forgot a 0 when they were looking at the stagger modifier for it or something. But yeah, it literally does so little stagger that's only able to stagger the lightest enemies. Can it stagger a Rager? Yeah, just barely. But I have my doubts that it would stagger a Rager out of an actual attack animation. So yeah, that's a really, really, really weak addition to this keystone. So though this node here, Vulture's Push, is garbage, it is still nowhere near as garbage as Vulture's Dodge, because Vulture's Dodge is currently broken. It doesn't have no effect, it just has a effect that breaks itself. So what you'll see here is if I go for a weapon that is super fast firing, like this Shredder auto pistol, and it gets lots of crits. Look at this buff that's popping up down there, right? That purple buff. As long as that purple buff is on the screen, I'm immune to all attacks, right? So this guy shouldn't be able to hit me at all. But you saw very clearly there, I had that buff on me. So what happened? Well, I just have a hypothesis, but what I'm guessing is that when you get another crit, it overwrites the buff and somehow makes it so it is not refreshing. So what I'm hoping here is that I can demonstrate, and I think this is proving it live, is that I can actually take no damage as long as I'm doing this at a slower pace. As long as I am getting these crits like this. Oh wait, that one still hit me. So never mind. I have no idea what's going on here. Wait, is it because I'm invulnerable? Okay, hold on. We're testing this live. Nope. Okay, so this is completely bugged and doesn't do anything. I have no idea what's going on. This stupid talent doesn't work half the time. I thought I had solved it for Fat Shark there, but nope. There's something broken with it about half of the time or more. It does not activate when you clearly have the buff, and it makes no sense. Yeah, so even there, I clearly had the buff. It wasn't overlapping with anything else. I have no idea what causes this to proc, and no, in fact, it is not bound to having to have 3 stacks of vultures in order for it to proc. That would be stupid if it did, but that's not how it works either. I've also tested that. So yeah, there you go, guys. Personally, I really hope that they come in here and just take a big fucking scalpel and cut this entire keystone out and all of these nodes off of the bottom here and replace them with something else entirely. I think that Vulture's Mark on its face could be good, but it needs more additional stuff that can provide it value to help it compete with chemical dependency, and Adrenaline Frenzy needs a complete teardown rework, and both of these nodes also need to be made into things that can function for all different varying builds, because Vulture's Mark only working with ranged and Adrenaline Frenzy only working with melee really pigeonholes you and makes your builds uncreative and boring. Gives you only 2 options on any given build in terms of what keystone you can use, which really sucks and is very limiting. So if they were to come back in here, they need to make Vulture's Mark have an additional keystone down here that says, now Vulture's Mark's effect can be triggered with melee kills as well, right? That's something like that would be so great, and it would allow you to play Vulture's Mark with a melee ranged hybrid rather than focusing on range the entire time. Anyway, guys, hopefully this helped you to understand why you will very seldom see any of the other keystones in my build, and if you do, it won't be this one right here, and they can get, Fat Shark, maybe he'll fix this up in the spring. Thanks for watching. Take care. Be safe out there. Text your mother. She's missing you. Okay, bye.